They're buying votes by covering up the mass rape of young girls.
Right up to the 11th hour, they were desperately trying to cover up what was taking place. They Tipp-X the word Pakistani out of the reports. It goes all the way up to the highest level of government in Whitehall. Starmer's got his back to the wall. He knows, the Prime Minister knows, multiple ministers in his government are neck deep in the cover-up. The BBC were in the emails that were involved in the cover-up.
But these people should not be MPs.
These people should be in prison. They sold children for votes.
Yeah, they sold children for votes.
Justice needs to be delivered. And that justice includes politicians going to prison. The vast majority of people are not here because they're racist. They're here because they care about children.
I mean, it's just not compatible for me with being a decent British human.
No, we cannot accept any belief system that says it's okay to rape children.
All right, Roger, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm really good, yeah.
We've a lot to talk about. We met previously and discussed the rape gangs, and since then we've had the Casey review out, and everything you said was true, and we have it now confirmed there was a cover-up.
Yeah, and I remember when the Home Secretary announced it in the afternoon. My people were telling me on Saturday, because Keir Starmer was running away somewhere, on the Thursday and Friday just before, what had happened was a whole host of my own YouTube videos and one of Andy Gould's interviews with me was pulled. And what that was a last-ditch attempt by the Labour Party to try and still maintain this cover-up.
Hold on, your videos were pulled?
They were pulled by YouTube, yeah, for defamation. Clearly, nothing defamatory. And Andy Gould, who was one of the first ones to interview me, his video of me was pulled for defamation. He had over 600,000 views on it. But that's by the by. I think what that shows, is right up to the 11th hour, they were desperately trying to cover up what was taking place. You will recall how there were leaks starting to come out just before the Monday when Yvette Cooper announced it. Leaks from Baroness Casey, essentially leaks from Baroness Casey's team. What happens there, so I'll tell you what happens there because I've seen that firsthand in my life, is Yvette Cooper acknowledged on the Monday, that the government had Casey's report for 10 days. Someone stood up and asked the question, and she acknowledged they'd had it for 10 days previously.
Well, that was clear because they, out of nowhere, they announced a full national inquiry, which they'd resisted.
Right from the beginning. And what happened there, the last-ditch attempt was they went back to Casey's team to try and nudge and change and get her to, soften what she wanted to publish. She kicked back, not just internally, but it was leaked. But, it's damning and what's coming out. So she pushed back in the way she had to push back. And then what happened was Yvette Cooper on the Monday confirmed that there was a national, she'd agreed to a national inquiry. And 6.5 years of my life, as simple as 6.5 years of my life from the moment someone put a carrier bag full of evidence, papers, a carrier bag full of papers. You and I went through it last time. Every word I've said is true, but it's worse than everything I knew because Casey had access to information elsewhere. And in the interview she later gave, and it was glossed over in kind, but it's significant. They Tipp-X the word Pakistani out of the reports.
I saw that on her Newsnight interview because she flaked it off.
Yeah. They Tipp-X the word Pakistani. Now, what does that show to us?
Well, I think it shows two things. One, it shows that they tried to cover up part of what was going on, but it also shows absolute incompetence of people who want to do a cover-up because you could just delete it and reprint the documents. So they're both stupid and immoral.
I think that has been what has took place on this journey to get us here. Stupidity, ignorance, the naivety of we wouldn't look at the documents in the right way, we wouldn't ask the questions, and complete immorality. Because what we are talking about, this isn't a game, is it? This is about the systematic cover-up of the grooming and abuse of 100,000 more children across this country. And Casey confirmed not only the cover-up, Casey also confirmed the ethnic correlation, where it could be confirmed, but the fact that still, to this day, they are not capturing the data of the ethnicity of the perpetrators or the victims. That's unprecedented. It shouldn't be allowed. It's not possible for that to happen.
They ask for it everywhere else.
Yeah.
Your passport.
As someone who's been repeatedly arrested, I know full well that your ethnicity is something that they specifically take reference of when you go in there. So that is institutional. That's an institutional cover-up. And that Casey didn't just stop there, did she? She also went further than I thought she would do. And I remember critiquing the Home Office report in 2020 that came out and said, there's no correlation. There's no correlation. And it was a scam. You looked at it, the way the data was presented, it was fabricated. But people don't believe that because they use that as a stick against me and so many others. The Guardian ran with the headline straight away. Home Office report proves there's no racial correlation. Casey has brought to public attention. She's gone above and beyond her remit, by the way. I think she got outraged and she went above and beyond her remit. She's gone and looked at the 2020 report. And that 2020 report, she has herself confirmed it's a fabrication. So here we have the government at the highest level publishing a report that is a work of fiction. If that wasn't bad enough, then you saw the fallout afterwards. There was an interview that Priti Patel gave. Priti Patel was the Home Secretary at the time of that 2020 report. She wrote the foreword on it. She has essentially offered to give state evidence, witness to the national inquiry. So she's on record already said, I will testify. And she's confirmed that there were elements of the state, deep state, if you want to, look at it that way, that put pressure on her and tried to cover this all up. So this cover-up goes beyond some muppet Tipex-ing the word Pakistani in a report, some police officer looking the other way every time these Pakistani men are brought in as and charged as members of these rape gangs. It goes all the way up to the highest level of government in Whitehall, where there were individuals publishing false, fabricated reports, and the Home Secretary saying she was powerless and the deep state was acting against her. Then you've got Michael Gove coming out and, saying, yes, I knew about this in 2012 and I did the right thing. You've got Dominic Cummings, giving his interview saying, oh, yes, I knew about this in 2011 and we did the right thing. It's crumbling all around them. And what they will now try and do is rig the terms of reference of the National Inquiry, because that's the only option left to them.
I don't think they'll get away with it.
No, neither do I. But it doesn't mean no one try.
I mean, we've got to commend Baroness Casey for doing what I think is... I think she's done a good job on this, and she's come out publicly and done the interviews, and she's been very honest. You're looking reserved there.
No, because I did not think she would do this. She was brought in to contain. Because that's what the government did. They brought her in, said, off you go, rapid audit, a very tight terms of reference of the audit, and she just ignored it.
Well, I think it's because the kind of horrific nature of it. When you get into some of the details of how people were raped. I mean, I've seen her repeatedly talk about the 13-year-old girl. Her birthday, she was repeatedly raped by a number of men. But I've also read that they targeted disabled people as well, disabled children as well. I think she was so horrified by it, I think she did the only thing that you could do, that everyone should have done who knew this information.
And what she did, whatever I believed at the beginning, she's now opened a can of worms. There's no going back. This is the Baroness, the establishment, no-nonsense person who can get to the truth, presented it in a manner that the government can work with. She's come back and said, no, the rules you've set, the parameters you've set of how you want to contain this, I am not playing with that. We need a national inquiry, and what that confirms is just by the terms, National Inquiries Act 2005, this is of grave concern. This is the highest level of intervention a government can announce short of criminal proceedings.
I just want to go through the details of what we know on the cover-up. So, former Rochdale MP Simon, how do you pronounce his name? Danchuk, a Labour MP at the time of the 2012 Rochdale Ring arrest, stated that the Labour Party leadership instructed him to keep religion and race out of it to avoid alienating voters. I mean, that's as big as a scandal as you can get in that you're a complicit in turning...
You're protecting the bloc vote.
You're protecting the wolf and leaving him to the sheep.
My only disappointment with Simon was he was the Rochdale MP. He was a Rochdale MP at the time of a lot of the cases. He should have come out with it.
Well, I've got here. So he said, it revealed to me the strength of the Labour Party willingness to cover up this. Or was this Baroness Casey? Labour Party's willingness to cover up the scandal in order to protect its support among local ethnic minorities.
That's Baroness Casey.
I mean, they're buying votes by covering up the mass rape of young girls. No, that might have been... anyway, he singled out, this is Simon, he singled out Jim Dobbin, MP for Hayward and Middleton, and Tony Lloyd, Parliamentary Labour Party Chair, as urging him to play down the ethnic dimensions.
So let me talk you to a little bit more about Tony Lloyd. He's dead now. He was the MP for Rochdale before he died. He was the Police and Crime Commissioner. I knew Tony Lloyd. I've sat in meetings with Tony Lloyd. He was a shrewd operator. At the time he said this to Diamond Chanchuk, he was the leader of the Labour Party in the House of Commons. So he wasn't some obscure backbench MP. This is the leader of the Labour Party in the House of Commons issuing these instructions to Simon Danchuk. He was the former Police and Crime Commissioner, and I know I've seen written evidence of Tony Lloyd sat in meetings with Jim McMahon, who was my town's MP, who I've demonstrated the evidence against, and the councillor who came forward at a similar time and whistleblew and said there are children being dragged out of care homes. Here's an email, reported it to the local organisation that took care of children and said, look, you need to know. It doesn't matter what the establishment wants to hide. You need to know. His name was Hughie MacDonald. Hughie MacDonald was sacked by the Labour Party, and Tony Lloyd sat in those meetings to sack him. Tony Lloyd, Police and Crime Commissioner, MP first in Manchester, then MP in Rochdale. He took it to his grave with him, but he was neck deep in the cover-up. But alongside him are MPs who are still to this day MPs that were involved in the cover-up, and they need to be called to the National Inquiry. They need to be called to testify.
Is Jim Dobbin still an MP?
I don't think he's still there, no.
Connor, can you look it up? MP for Hayward and Middleton. Well, they face a problem in the National Inquiry in that they're willing to reopen all the cases and they're willing to relook at all the evidence and see. It says in the wording that they will happily reopen the cases and look at if there has been a cover up, who said what and who covered up what. I mean, we still know governments are capable of further cover ups.
Yvette Cooper, at the same time as she announced the National Inquiry, confirmed that the National Crime Agency is now leading on this work, and they've basically gone to the cold cases, and they're opening up the cold cases, former Labour MPs.
Oh, he's died as well?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So would you say there are sitting MPs?
I'll name them.
Okay.
Straight away. Named in The Spectator, not me, named in The Spectator, is a guy called Sean Davies. Sean Davies...
You mentioned him last time.
...is the MP for Telford. He was at the time leader of Telford Council. If you bring up the Spectator article, you'll see it. Laura Brown, I think her name was, who wrote a really good article just after the announcement of the public inquiry about the Labour men who are neck deep in the cover-up. Sean Davies was, at the time, leader of Telford Council. He stood up in Parliament. I think this is what outraged everyone. He stood up in Parliament and tried to pretend he was part of the campaign to expose all of this. The evidence is he was part of the campaign to help cover all of this up whilst he was leader of Telford Council.
Here we go. In 2016, Telford's Conservative MP Lucy Allen called for a statutory inquiry into child grooming in Telford, contacted by survivors who wanted justice. She set out a campaign to help them. But Davies rejected calls for an inquiry. He signed a letter to the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, claiming that we do not feel at the time that a further inquiry is necessary. It would take 6 more years for victims to get the inquiry. When it did arrive, it was non-statutory, meaning that the chair was unable to compel witnesses to give evidence. The report found huge failings on behalf of the council. Will Davies apologise to those who felt... I thought it was his name. Will Davies apologise who felt they let them down? Today, after Cooper's statement, Davies stood up and spoke. Did he apologise? No. He said he claimed that Telford chose to have a local-based review as opposed to statutory because the then Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, and then the local government, Richie Sunak, refused to provide a statutory inquiry in Telford. He made no reference to that letter he signed in 2016. Davies is not unique. There are many others like him on Labour-run councils across the country who victims of grooming gangs feel they could have done more to help them get justice. Is this why Starmer fought as hard as he could against an inquiry? He surely knew that some politicians would be caught in the crossfire. Starmer had no choice but to cave on the grooming gang inquiry. The evidence in Baroness Casey's report is so devastatingly damning that it cannot be ignored. Now Labour must wait for the inquiry's findings. If Starmer has any sense, he will bring out his party's bodies willingly before he is forced to.
Yeah. Yeah. See why I'm smiling?
Yeah.
I've now got the establishment behind me. Yeah. I don't need to write this. They're writing this. The evidence is the evidence.
But these people should not be MPs.
These people should be in prison. And this is what we're pushing for. So when we campaigned for a public inquiry and the likes of Jess Phillips stood up and fed us nonsense about local inquiries being effective, all of that, it's now been proven it's nonsense. Yeah, the local inquiries don't have the statutory powers. And the likes of Robbie Moore, Grant Shapps, I think, the Conservative Shadow Home Secretary, they came up and they articulated to the nation, we need a statutory national inquiry because a statutory inquiry has powers to compel witnesses because in all these local inquiries, the senior police officers, politicians didn't turn up. And it has the power to directly go after evidence rather than relying on the people who are being investigated to provide the evidence against them, which is what took place. What we now need to encourage people to understand is that a statutory inquiry's powers go way beyond compelling witnesses and going after the evidence. A statutory inquiry can also name names and recommend prosecutions. This has never been done because, you know, they control the narrative, don't they? And the statutory inquiries, the Post Office or Grenfell, they affected a small number of people. And whilst there is moral outrage towards it, no one's invested in the same way. This inquiry, this national inquiry would never have taken place if it wasn't for the outrage across the entire country from a wide demographic. Remember, they first tried to contain this. In January, when we first released this, when Elon Musk first spoke out and spread this across the country, 2 things happened. First of all, Jess Phillips tried to present herself as though she's a victim of a man bullying her. It's misogynistic and, you know, that tired old tactic. And Keir Starmer stood up and claimed it was a far-right bandwagon.
Yep.
So they
haven't apologised for that yet.
No. They're saying that they made reference to the politicians. Nonsense. They made reference to people like me because if you go and check Hansard, in Hansard you will find my name as a far-right racist and activist.
You don't look like a far-right racist.
The MPs stood up in Hansard and named me as a far-right racist, you know, an activist. And why? Because of the work I do and the way I do it. I'm not shouting and screaming. I'm not marching up and down a hill. I'm analysing information, presenting it to you, and educating and presenting, and that's all I've done for 6.5 years.
But it moved quick, this far-right racist. But was it the guy, is it Owen Jones?
Oh, yeah, he denied he said it, but the internet remembers, doesn't it?
Oh, the bloke's a moron. He's a moron on nearly every topic he talks about, but he put out... Didn't even somebody say it in Parliament? I seem to have a memory of somebody saying it in Parliament.
So, since we spoke, the Lucy Powell made reference to it in an interview where she made reference to someone else and called it a dog whistle and that small trumpet. So they pushed the far right and racist narrative as far as they could. It didn't wash. And now we know at the other end, Baroness Casey is presenting not just facts, of the overrepresentation of ethnic minorities. He's still using the word Pakistani and Asian interchangeably. I don't like that. I don't think my Sikh friends, my Hindu friends, my Chinese friends like that. I think we need to be more specific. We don't, when we have demographic data, we go off ethnicity. I always see the Bangladeshi tick there or the Pakistani tick there. So there's, they need to be a bit more honest there. But we'll get there. Yvette Cooper's confirmed 1,000 cases. 1,000 cases she's confirmed has been reopened.
Yeah.
And the National Crime Agency are having to do this because we know across the country, the local police forces were complicit in the cover-up. This is uncharted territory.
I mean, it's a disgusting stain on our country.
Yeah.
Absolutely disgusting. What was that, Connor?
The person in Parliament was Keir Starmer. He said jumping on the far-right bandwagon.
So Keir Starmer said it in Parliament?
I think it was in a press conference he had to do.
It was in a speech. He had doctors behind him. He was doing a speech on the NHS or something.
The Prime Minister defended accusing the Tories of jumping on a far-right bandwagon when the call for a national inquiry into grooming gangs in January is they did not launch one while in government. But that's not a defence of it. That's a piss weak. Hold on. So Keir Starmer, I hate giving him sir. I'm just going to go with Keir. He's no sir to me. Keir Starmer said that he gets frustrated with politicians who shout and scream and do nothing as he defended past comments about grooming gang inquiries. Speaking to Beth Rigby, the Prime Minister asked if he regretted saying in January that those calling for a national probe into paedophile rings were jumping on a far-right bandwagon. So Keir said he was really clear. He was talking about the Tories who were demanding an inquiry they never set up I was calling out those politicians. I'm frustrated with politics when people shout and scream a lot and do nothing when they've got the opportunity to do.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't stack up.
It doesn't stack up.
No,
it doesn't, because he's called it far right.
Yeah.
The Conservatives are not far right.
So this is the fundamental space where it doesn't stack up. It doesn't matter if they came late to the party. It didn't matter if they didn't do anything beforehand. What he's still maintaining is that those of us campaigning for a national inquiry on the now confirmed cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of this nation's children is a far-right bandwagon. He's still maintaining it's a far-right issue. How is it? Look at me and you speaking here. How is this a far-right issue?
It's not a far-right issue. Listen, if he'd have come out and said, yeah, I'm sorry, I got that wrong, I apologise, you would in part go, well, at least he's recognising it, but you just become suspicious that he knew what was going on. He knew there was a cover-up. Yeah, they rejected the call for a national inquiry. They said the local inquiries were enough, which you say don't have statutory powers. And one of the ways to shift the focus is to call it a far-right conspiracy or far-right. Every time there's something we don't like, it's far-right.
And it does a disservice. For me, it does a disservice because there is genuine extremism in this country. There is there is a genuine far-right.
Yeah.
But this isn't the far-right. People caring about the gang rape of children is not a far-right cause.
The humble bee, a keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
I would say the mass gang rape of young girls across the country, vulnerable girls from care homes, people with learning difficulties and disabilities, that is extreme. That's about as I'm trying to remember a scandal bigger in my lifetime. I just cannot think of anything. And there's been a lot.
Liz Truss, you've spoken to Liz Truss,
Yep.
I think, yeah? 100,000 is her reference of numbers. Reports of 100,000 children. When I go around and I add the numbers up, it's far more. You'll know I'm working on the rape gang inquiry team of Rupert Lowe's. It's cross-party. I have no political allegiances here. I'm a campaigner. This is an issue, and I'll work with whoever, can help get justice, deliver justice on this. We've already got over 50 towns and cities where survivors have come to us. Already over 50 towns and cities. Cross-reference that with Charlie Peters is 50 that day, that the...
Charlie's great. He made the documentary,
I just spoke to him 10 minutes ago.
He made the documentary, yeah.
Yeah. He won an award last week. We need young men like that, journalists like that, who have clearly have a moral compass and have seen this for what it is and are running with it. And every time one comes along, people say to me, Roger, he's not said this, he said this. I said, you don't understand. We've been fighting alone on this for such a long time. Everyone that comes to help us, whether it's a Conservative MP that should have said something but didn't, a news channel, whoever, the Spectator, come on. We need as many allies as we can get, because at the end of this, one of two things will happen. Either they will get away with it and it will just completely disenfranchise an entire generation of people who now know the truth. There was a cover-up, or we will hold to account politicians and senior elected officials in councils, policy officers, policemen. They'll get held to account, and justice will be delivered, because this is a watershed moment for our country. Do we trust our democracy? This is far more. And as important as it is,
no, we don't.
Well, then we're going to get. This is a moment, isn't it? This is a moment. This is a moment because the evidence is so overwhelming. Baroness Casey found it. The evidence is so overwhelming. We now know that there are individuals alive and well in positions of power who were involved, who benefited, who gained, who perhaps have their positions of power as a direct consequence of the selling of children.
The mainstream media, how complicit do you hold them in their silence? The BBC, Sky News, some of the major newspapers in avoiding proper reporting?
All the time. One of the reasons why we are over the line here, as far as we got, is because of the power of X, Elon Musk, people such as yourselves.
I'm late to the party.
No, but people such as yourselves, because if we didn't have this space, where you spoke to people like me and your audience spoke to their audience, this is very much a grassroots movement that got it here. This isn't a national, the BBC they should be ashamed of their actions, because I can trace back to my own town, the BBC were in the emails that were involved in the cover-up.
You showed us them
Kevin
on the
Fitzpatrick.
website. Yeah.
Kevin Fitzpatrick involved in the cover-up, holding back stories because of his relationship with the council, his relationship with the MP, and to maintain community relations.
Can we dig that back up? Because I just want to reference that. That's the emails that are on your website, right? How do we find that?
If you find recusant-9.com, and it's Welcome to Oldham Part 4, you'll see it now.
Here we go.
There you go. Part 4, that one.
Right. I just want a reminder of this. Where should we read?
Keep going. I think one more, maybe.
I know we're going over ground we've covered before. I just think this is important.
If you keep going, I'll when I see it, what's that? Is that from Kevin Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
There you go.
Hi, Jim. I'm emailing to clear up some confusion about what I'm told you and your colleagues at the council understand to be my involvement in a recent story about child exploitation for the BBC Radio Manchester. As you're aware, last month I was passed some information about concerns about, the private clubs in Oldham and suspicions about CSE child sexual exploitation taking place inside them. As a responsible journalist, I made inquiries with both you and GMP, who's
Greater Manchester
Police. Despite contacting the Asian community confirming to me that there was concern about young people going into these clubs, at the request of Greater Manchester Police and the Council, we agreed not to broadcast anything after you told us that knowledge about activities at clubs was very limited and you were concerned about tensions in the town ahead of Lee Rigby's funeral. You assured us that the issue wasn't being ignored, that you were monitoring the situation, and should action be taken, we would be first to know. On that basis, I agreed to hold any story on the private clubs for the time being. I've been true to my word. I only discussed the story with the news editor, Michelle Daniel, and no one else at BBC Radio Manchester. However, I've come back from 2 weeks holiday to be told, Jim, that you're of the opinion that I was also behind the request for the child sexual exploitation figures, and that it's somehow a continuation of my request for information on the private members clubs. This is not the case. Colleague at Radio Manchester, Jonathan Alley, has spent past year covering the fallout from the high-profile child sexual exploitation court case in Rochdale, and he has covered the story extensively and professionally, often with cooperation of Rochdale Council. Following Tony Loy's statement that stopping child sexual exploitation was his priority as Police and Crime Commissioner, Jonathan thought it would be good to establish how many children in the city region were currently considered at risk, and so began contacting councils, including your own. This is a legitimate request. How else would the public know next year if Tony Lloyd had achieved what he set out to do if they didn't know the starting point was? All 10 councils gave Jonathan the information, and the story ran this yesterday. The story didn't mention the Oldham figures individually. This request was nowhere linked to the private club story, and I had no involvement in it. I want to make clear that when I said I would stop pursuing the child sexual exploitation story about the private clubs, that is what I did. That said, I should also make clear that if I get information which suggests there is child sexual exploitation taking place at these private clubs, then I'll be back in touch. I feel my integrity is being blah, blah, blah. I mean, you would have thought as a journalist, that's a reason to dig deeper.
His father, this is how incestuous it is in the north, his father was a senior Labour Party councillor.
Here we go.
Joe Fitzpatrick was a senior Labour Party councillor.
But look, that's local BBC news, but I still don't think the mainstream media were covering this, because I would see interviews pop up on podcasts I follow, or I don't know, it might have been GB News covering it, or people talking about it on Twitter. I kind of remember a fever around it, but it wasn't being covered on the BBC at the same time.
There was a willingness to talk about this during the time Andrew Norfolk, who passed away a couple of weeks ago, exposed this. We now know from Dominic Cummings that when Andrew Norfolk, who was at the Times, was exposing this, Rotherham Council went to the government to try and get an injunction out against the Times to prevent them reporting against this. This is now a matter of fact. They released it, sadly, after the poor man died, but it's now a matter of fact. They went with this for a couple of years whilst they could contain it in the way that, yes, this happened. There are a number of isolated cases, and it happened in these northern towns, and it was the fear of being branded racist, which was the reason why they got away with it. Now, I and others have now expanded that, and Casey is still talking about the fear of branding racist. It's safe territory. We were scared of being called racist, so we didn't do something. It's the institutional culture. We can change that. It's the McPherson sort of stuff, switch the way around. So instead of institutional racism towards black people around the time of Stephen Lawrence, what you can now say is institutional fear of being branded racist. Complete U-turn. But what we've done, you said, okay, let's park that. Accept that is one reason. That isn't the reason why these men committed these crimes. Why did these men commit these crimes? Why did they target specifically white girls? And the evidence we've been able to compile, including from court transcripts, is that these were racially motivated crimes. These were Pakistani men in the main targeting white working class girls because they treated white working class girls as inferior, as dirt, as white trash. All of the cliches you've heard. It's uncomfortable for our multicultural society to go there. What the court documents also then proved, including the testimonies from the girls who were gang raped, is that they legitimized their actions through religion, through their interpretation of Islam. Since you and I met, there was a court case in Manchester where 7 men were convicted.
Mm-hmm.
They are on record as treating these children, I think one was 11 at the time when it started, as sex slaves. The concept of sex slaves, they legitimize through certain verses in the Quran. Of the taking of sex slaves from the kuffar during the caliphate, when you're trying to expand and at war, they legitimize their barbarity through taking verses from the Quran. Now, my position is this. As a Muslim, my position is this. The imams in my community have a responsibility to now speak out and say, this is completely unacceptable. We find this abhorrent and we will not support any of this. Not one. Naz Shah, when Yvette Cooper came out and did her statement, and they had the Q&A afterwards for a couple of hours, Naz Shah stood up, the Bradford MP, who infamously liked and shared, apparently by mistake, a tweet or that said these girls should shut their mouths for the sake of diversity. That's what the infamous, accidentally, yeah, on record, to type it up, you'll see it.
An accidental share and like is like somebody committing suicide and shooting themselves twice. It doesn't happen.
These girls should shut their mouths for the sake of diversity. Stood up and claimed that the mosques and the Muslim community was up in arms against this. Show me where. I'll go. I'll stand alongside them. Show me where in this country where the mosque and the Muslim community are up in arms against the cover-up of the gang rape of children, where they have said to, openly said that these men do not reflect our community. It's abhorrent what they've done, and their interpretation of Islam is not the one we share. Nowhere, Peter. Absolutely nowhere. And I'm having this conversation with you now off the back of 2 days ago, a good friend of mine phoned me up and said, Raja, we can no longer protect you because you talk about the Islamists too much and we get in too much heat, which basically means it's something they don't want to deal with. 2 days ago, there was a last Thursday or Friday, there was a raid in Oldham. Mm-hmm. There's something called Operation Sherwood. It's a police operation that only came about as a direct consequence of what we exposed. So when the Oldham Assurance Review came out and the police admitted to their faults, to try and contain what happened, they created something called Operation Sherwood that would look at cases again between 2011 and 2014. They went out and have now arrested 10 or 11 people. The 11th person they arrested, by coincidence, lives opposite my sister, my mum's house. And I've seen him with my own eyes deal drugs. He's a drug dealer. He's a notorious local drug dealer. You know, the cliche of a terraced house and a BMW parked outside. He's got a BMW M4 or something parked outside, owns the takeaway around the corner where he clearly launders his money through. His dad is the local imam. So the guy who's been arrested, forget the drug dealing, the guy who's been arrested for historical child sex offences, his father is the local imam. You type in Operation Sherwood and BBC and you'll see it come up. This is embedded.
There you go.
There.
Two more, go to the top column. 2 more rape arrests in child sex abuse inquiry. Two more men have been arrested on suspicion of raping a child more than 10 years ago as part of an investigation into historical sexual abuse of several girls and older. And the suspects, aged 30 at 40, were detained. How's this name? Hasn't named them. Hasn't named them.
No, it hasn't. But that front door I recognise. I shared the video. But it's opposite my mum's house.
Oh, is this it there?
Yeah, that's the house.
Come on, can you go back to that? Yeah. So the Quran also suggests certain meanings of integrating slaves, some who were enslaved after being captured in the war, into the Muslim community. It allows slaves to marry either other slaves or free persons and prohibits owners from prostituting unwilling female slaves. Despite this protection against one form of sexual exploitation, female slaves do not have the right to grant or deny sexual access to themselves. Instead, the Quran permits men to have sexual access to what their right hands possess, meaning female captives or slaves. This was widely accepted and practiced among early Muslims. The Prophet Muhammad, for example, kept a slave concubine who was given to him as a gift by the Roman Emperor of Alexandria. Do you not share that interpretation?
Oh, come on, man.
I don't know. I've never read the Quran.
And I struggle with my faith. And I look at this, and like many of us who look at this, we just look at this and think, no, we just concentrate on being decent people.
But are when you read the Quran, are there passages that you struggle with?
And when you look at a passage like that, and when I ask my friends who are far more well versed in the Quran, they talked about they defend that by talking about precedents, historical context. At the time when that took place, that wasn't unusual. That was the norm. You know, at the time that took place, that might have been the norm. But you tell me, where in this country would anyone accept, or in any Western society, would anyone accept slavery and keeping sex slaves, children as slaves?
Oh no, I'm with you.
But who should deal with that? Surely the imams should deal with that.
No, I agree. But does the Quran need an update?
But there are verses in there all about compassion and kindness. And what I say to my friends who attack me, saying, no, you can't question the Quran, I say, no, listen, I'm not questioning the Quran. I'm questioning the barbarism of these men who take verses. If you say it's out of context, or if you say the historical times have changed, they take verses and they use it to legitimize the gang raping of children. You have a child, the same as I do. I say to my friends, your daughter's 10, your daughter's 9. You would not accept this. Why should other people have to endure this? And we are not. And the public inquiry has got to do this. The national inquiry has got to do this. It's got to investigate not just those who are involved in the cover-up, but it's also got to investigate the reasons given by those who committed the crimes, because the national inquiry, under the Inquiries Act, also has powers for structural reform and to recommend new laws and stuff like that. And if we need that, Peter, we need that. If we need to introduce new laws that says, no matter what any religious guidance might say, you can, under no circumstances in this country, what we're doing instead?
Well, the law should trump the Quran.
And yet you and I are sat here right now whilst they're forcing through Parliament right now.
Oh no.
The Islamophobia definition and laws. They're doing this right now, and the reason why they're doing this is because they're fighting a civil war in the Muslim communities between the Islamist and Pakistani sectarian MPs who are taking the votes away, representing themselves. We can cut out the middleman. We can cut out the Labour Party. They're standing on a pro-Gaza, and not like me and you appalled by the killings going on. They're not there. They've took it to a very anti-Semitic place, and a hatred of Jews and wipe them off the face of the earth sort of place. And they are now pushing that extreme narrative. They're getting the votes. They've got 4 MPs now. Corbyn is the de facto leader. They'll get more and more and more. And the Labour Party are trying to counter this. And one of the ways in which they're trying to counter this is saying, oh, we'll bring in an Islamophobia law. That's the motive. But what are the consequences for the rest of us?
Well, am I blaspheming right now?
I clearly am.
But are we? Are we crossing a threshold just by discussing it? Are we crossing a threshold by
the Islamophobia definition? Again, the working group is out, and you'll see the document. You can see the document yourself. You and I criticizing any aspect of Islam would be seen as Islamophobia. Now, what I'm criticizing is how these men interpreted the faith to gang rape children. And what I'm asking for is safeguards to make sure that they can't do this. And the challenge against those who are responsible custodians of the faith, the imams, the Muslim Council, whoever, to come out and condemn all of this. They're not doing that. And we criticizing it by their own definitions that they're trying to pass through. You and I would be Islamophobic.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And this is what Hayek warned about. Do you ever read Hayek? Yeah, he warned about the consequences of the bloated state, that ultimately they would come for your speech, your thoughts, your ideas, because they have to control us.
And this is what you're seeing with the Islamophobia law that they're passing through is no different than what they did with the selling of our children. It is the containment of the Muslim community and the votes that come with it.
How challenging have you found your own faith during this? And have you questioned the compatibility of Islam with a country like the UK?
I see my faith in 2 ways, really. One is the way in which I was raised and the people that raised me. The faith was a place of solace, of comfort, of community, and of service. That's the world I was raised in the faith, and that's why I'm okay with that. What I'm very, very clear with is what's taking place over the last 20 years or so, is how the faith has been politicized, has been weaponized, and this global ummah and seeing yourself forever as a Muslim victimhood lends itself to those who want to exploit you, turn you against the places where you live. And when I look at it that way, Peter, I always end up in the same place. So people like Tommy Robinson would and I've seen his interviews, and I have no issue with the guy. He's on his own journey. I've seen him with the Quran in his hand and saying Islam must be banned and all of that, and he's quoting bits out of it. I hold the state responsible. The law of this land, as far as I'm concerned, trumps any religious doctrine. We've been on this journey forever, and we know that. Now, why is the law of this land not safeguarding decent Muslims who want nothing to do with this? Because everywhere I go, there are many people like me, but they're petrified. Why will they speak out when when the government itself panders to these extremists?
Because a small group of loud people can cause a lot of trouble. I had a similar scenario with my football club. We have a women's team, and we were aware of a team that had a trans player, and I was against the FA's rules on trans players because for two reasons. I thought it was unfair in a sporting environment.
Biologically unfair, yeah.
Biologically unfair, and second, and most important reason, is dangerous. So I was against it. So I researched the idea that we as a club may choose to refuse to play against a team with a trans player. I spoke to somebody else at another club. They were in a similar position. So I started to speak to people across football. Every single person I spoke to was against it. Every single one of them was scared of me making the policy. People were scared that they would be singled out, they would be cancelled, that it would affect their careers, that they'd be attacked by the press. And it's just a similar scenario. It's this, and it's because we've attacked free speech so much in this country, because we've weaponized speech, because we've legitimized the cancellations of people, because we've had this culture within social media, if you make a mistake, we're going to crush you. And I think it's predominantly come from the left. The right are guilty of it as well now.
So the right disappointed me yesterday. I read the the Glastonbury stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, forever punk and rock has been anti-established. Forever they've been shouting and screaming about killing police officers or killing the government or bringing down civilizations.
Well, IC did cop killer. NWA did fuck the police.
Yes.
It's rap, punk. All of these things
forever.
Yeah.
And I do not believe that we react because they've cancelled us, we react by saying we want to cancel them. I don't think that's the way we should go. I don't think that benefits any of us. And I look at this and I'm thinking, no. What we need to do is be smarter with this, and we need to focus on the government, and we need to focus on the underlying issue, which is free speech.
Yes.
Which is free speech. And if you offend me, I watched the comments last time. I read the comments last time after you and I spoke. On the whole, brilliant. A few of them. What's this Muslim doing? We shouldn't be here. I'm all right with it.
Yeah.
I'm completely all right with it, because for me, the fact that you and I are speaking and they're reacting like that means that something is triggering in their mind where they're thinking, hold on, I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying. And we need to, and everywhere we are challenged, it's good for us. If our belief systems are challenged, whether it's for good or for negativity, otherwise you're in an echo chamber.
Well, there's this great stand-up comedian, I forget his name, an Australian guy, talks about free speech. And he said, oh, you're offended. Okay. And then what? What actually happened? I don't even know what offence means in that scenario. I mean, my comments, I get called fat, loser, thick all the time. Am I offended? Maybe. Does it affect my life? No. Just carry on. No, it's just I'm
happy that you watched it.
Yeah,
I'm happy. For someone who's a campaigner like me, I'm like, you're offended. Brilliant. That means you listen to it. That's a win for me.
Do you know what's worse? Someone can call me a fat loser, or they can say, Pete, I don't think you did a good job on that interview. And that's the one that gets me. I'm like, shit. Where did I go wrong? What didn't I do? Did I interrupt too much? Did I talk too much? Did I not? That's the one that offends me. But no, look. I'm an ardent supporter of free speech. Look, I loved the Kneecap film. I thought it was brilliant. My family is from the my dad's side is from the Irish Republic. I would love a united Ireland. Do I think running on stage with a Hezbollah flag is a good idea? Probably not. But do I think they should be charged on terrorism offences? No, it's performative. It's performative.
Yeah.
What did I think of what Bob Villan said? I wouldn't say it. Kind of thought it was a bit gross. Do I like the IDF? No. But are they defending the country? Yes. They're under constant attack from every single side. Are there? Do I think the IDF is extreme at times? Yes. But again, they're under attack the whole time. But
put yourself in their position. How would you behave? That's what I always say as a starting point with people who want to have conversations with me on any issue like that. Put yourself in their position. How would you behave?
I just think there's a lot of nuance to all of this. But Keir Starmer calling for Kneecap to be removed from Glastonbury, no, this is not what we do.
It's not a Prime Minister should get involved in.
Well, yeah, he shouldn't. And also, I mean, he's just going to empower these people. My daughter was at Glastonbury. She said you could get into the field for Kneecap. I like Kneecap. I think their music, they're getting bigger audiences than their music deserves. Their music's all right. They're not the best rappers I've ever heard. It's kind of interesting they're doing it in Gaelic. But you're empowering these people. You're making them stronger. It always is the way. And then when Kemi came out against it, I was like, come on, Kemi.
It's just gesture politics.
Yeah, this is
just grandstanding. And these guys, whatever they're doing, our response, I mean, this is my point of view. Our focus should be on let them. And they should have the right, same as we should have the right.
And try and understand why they're saying it. Why is Bob Villan? I mean, just go and read the lyrics of their songs, right? They're from a place where they feel like they've had a life of oppression for being black men, right? I saw one song where he's talked about the first time he was called the N-word and he went back to his mum. And he's, what I think focus more on why they're saying. Why is he saying kill the IDF? What does he mean by that? Does he mean kill soldiers in the IDF? Or does he mean end the IDF as an entity? As an entity. Yeah. Understand why he's saying this. But if you don't look at the problem, why people are saying it, you don't answer it. If you're just trying to ban, you just throw fuel on the fire. It doesn't change anything. But it's just we're so ideological now.
And we've retreated, haven't we? We've retreated to extreme positions, and we are not open to the sides of the other.
Here we go. Connor's got out. Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. Contemporary examples of Islamophobia in public life, the media, schools, the workplace, and encounters between religions and non-religions in the public sphere could taken into account the overall context include, but not limited to, calling for, aiding, instigating or justifying the killing or harming of Muslims in the name of racist, fascist ideology. I agree we should be doing that.
But the existing law already covers that. Yeah. Calling for the killing of anyone because of who they are is already an offence.
So this is interesting. Why making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Muslims as such? I mean, to study this case.
Let me give you a stereotypical example of Muslims. Muslim women are oppressed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would agree they are. I mean,
well, that would be a stereotypical opinion, and that would be seen as Islamophobic.
Just on that, culturally, so I understand, do Muslim women themselves generally feel oppressed? Is there data on this? Has the research been done?
So,
or do they culturally accept it?
Very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin.
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with Casa.
I think one, they culturally accept it. Two, when it's the norm around you. I think you need to understand the amount of pressure that they face if they did not conform. I look at this through the prism of my mother and her generation. They never wore a hijab. They were Bangladeshi women. Bangladeshi women wore saris. That's culturally what they wore. When I was growing up, the Pakistani girls, they spent a fortune on the salwar kameezes. With the scarves and stuff. The hijab and the headscarf has been superimposed on top of cultural identity. It has been fought, and those people who are fighting are losing. People like me are losing because these people are powerful. And what we're now increasingly seeing is the state accommodate that pressure, and I don't agree with it. There's a Home Office late girl, senior enough in the Home Office, who on her profile celebrates how she doesn't shake the hands of people because Islamically she can't be shaking the hands of people. I think Kate tried it once. Princess Kate went to shake someone's hand and they refused and said, "No, I'm a Muslim."
That happened. That happened recently with one of the MMA fighters.
Yeah, it happened with the girl who Kate.
I can't remember her name.
Yeah. Mate. For me, this is straightforward. Again, it's this: the state should have a position. If you're doing a job for the Home Office, culturally we shake hands. I've been sent all around the world. You look people in the eye, you shake hands. They teach you how to shake hands. Forget anything else. They teach you how to conduct yourself. How can you not shake someone's hand?
Yeah, I mean,
but it's our fault.
Yeah,
it's for me. We're allowing that prejudice to establish itself within that community, which then further oppresses women. It's our fault because we're not robust enough in our democracy. You'll see it here. Oh, come on. Come on. And she's apologising. Come on.
I mean, look, I'm not opposed to it as a cultural norm. If it's some kind of respect to his own, is it because of respect for your own wife? Is it that I don't understand what the cultural norm is.
Mate, it's to do with possession. You go deeper and deeper, and it gets darker and darker.
Oh, okay. Connor, can you back up that Islamophobia thing? Okay. Accusing Muslims as a group for being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing by a single Muslim person or group of Muslim individuals. I mean, so you've broken that law because you've basically blamed the imams for the interpretation of the law. So you're going to go to jail, my man.
Mate, they'll probably kill me before I go to jail, but
Accusing Muslims as a group or Muslim majority states of inventing or exaggerating Islamophobia, ethnic cleansing or genocide perpetrated against Muslims. Accusing Muslim citizens of being more loyal to the Ummah, transnational Muslim community, or to their countries of origin, or to the alleged priorities of Muslims worldwide than the interests of their own nations. Well, but that can become a critique. Isn't the critique of Sharia law that?
Of course, the critique of Sharia law is that. But what they're saying is we can't question the loyalties of people. Why can we not question the loyalties of people? Because surely, if we believe that as this country progresses and more the Muslims become bigger than they currently are, so there's 4 or 5%, say it becomes 10% in our lifetime. Say it becomes 10% in our lifetime or 15% in our lifetime. Surely we have a duty to make sure that the children who are born Muslim in this country in next year or in years to follow are as British as you and I are and are as loyal to this state as you and I are. Surely we have a duty to do that. And any state that fails to encourage that loyalty to the place that is their home, that's a failing on us.
This last one's interesting. Using the symbols and images associated with classic Islamophobia, Muhammad being a paedophile, claims of Muslims spreading Islam by the sword or subjugating. Would that include what Charlie Hebdo did, which is just mockery?
Yeah, mockery.
So satire isn't possible.
Satire isn't possible. And not just satire isn't possible. The critique, if we don't critique these issues and have these conversations in a safe public space, that doesn't stop them from happening. All that will ever happen is the people with actually a genuine hatred pick up on it.
But that's Islamophobia. But the blasphemy laws must cover all religions.
Well,
I know why it's coming into force, because they want to reduce what they perceive as Islamophobia. But that's not the actual. Can't be the words of the bill, Connor, for Islamophobia for. I think
Nick Timothy.
He did a great job.
Is a very sharp man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of Liz Truss's team, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's very good.
I met the guy once, and he's sharp.
We had him here. He's
Have you had
very
him?
good. Yeah,
He's sharp. And I look at the likes of Nick Timothy, and I think he's holding a position that we all need to support. And if we don't support him, where does it go?
I wonder if the national inquiry would fall foul of the Islamophobia definitions.
I think it will, because it's got to go and look at whether there was any legitimization of the gang rape of children through an interpretation of Islam.
Well,
and if it does find there was, which it will do, then you can't say it.
So we've got it here. While national data sets were unreliable, local data from Greater Manchester, South Yorkshire and West Yorkshire revealed a disproportionate number of grooming suspects of Asian, particularly Pakistani heritage, up to 64% in Rotherham. So
it's just an Islamic blasphemy law. It doesn't take into account any other religions. That is it.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Hold on. Have you got receipts for that?
Well, I mean, I've searched up blasphemy law and it's just coming up with the same article.
That would be unusual to have a blasphemy law that only covers Islam. I'd find that.
The Islamists wouldn't do that. They'd want to have the veneer of all the Abrahamic faiths.
Hold on. So Darren of Plymouth, what's he saying? New blasphemy law proposals are out, not for Christians, for Islam. Okay, yeah. I mean that.
So what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Are you intentionally trying to turn people against each other? Not what they're trying to do. Are they intentionally trying to turn people against each other?
I'm just surprised they're trying to get away with that. Connor, could you just do me a favour, just for my own sanity? Can you get ChatGPT up and just ask it the following question: are you aware of the recent proposals for blasphemy laws in the UK? I just want to sense check this because. Right, okay. Concerns over Quran burning prosecutions, freedom of expression bill introduced. Conservative MP, that's Nick Timothy. Government Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has written a ministerial reply but confirmed that no new blasphemy law will be introduced unless the National Secular Society and Humanist UK warn that the current public order prosecution amount to a de facto blasphemy law must be addressed through reform. Although formal blasphemy laws were abolished in 2008 in Scotland, prosecution under Section 405 of the Public Order Act have been interpreted as curbing religious criticism. The Freedom of Expression Bill sets to restore legislative clarity, ensuring that speech that might upset some is not criminalised by default. Okay, so there's a war going on here. What to watch? Debate of the bill, second reading scheduled 11th of July, a critical moment to track progress. Court of Appeal rulings in recent Quran burning cases could signal how far public order laws are interpreted, public discourse, including parliamentary motions. I mean, look, I don't...
The Quran burning, yeah.
It's a bit unnecessary, though. It's a bit unnecessary. It's, you know, I understand he's making a political point, but it's also a little bit unnecessary.
Mate,
why inflame a situation?
I looked at what he did and I was disappointed. And he wanted to inflame a situation. Yeah. He wanted to. You know, I looked at him, I looked at how he reacted afterwards, and he wanted to, you know, it reminded me of that American pastor, you know, a while back who was getting holds of loads of Qurans and he was going to have a big bonfire. Like, you want to provoke, but in the main, the vast majority of people are not like that. They're not interested in that. So if he wants to burn it, am I happy? No. But mate, you crack on.
Oh, I defend you doing it.
You crack on, mate. You know, if it makes your day, you crack on. Go and buy another copy and crack on. But should I then go and want to punch you or incite your murder? No, come on. Again, it goes to that fundamental belief. Do we believe, you know, as a society, do we have freedom of speech? You know, and the freedom to offend, as long as you're not harming me or you or inciting violence against me or you, then surely that's the line in the sand. Offend me as much as you want. Offend my faith as much as you want. And that viewpoint, sadly, is held by fewer and fewer of us.
There's a big rot in our country, big rot across all government, all institutions. We're a laughing stock of the world at the moment. It's a big rot, and I don't know how this gets turned around. Because in every direction I see the rot. I see it at local government level, I see it at national government level, I see it in this rape gang or paedophile gang inquiries, I see it in just every single thing. There's this deep rot in the country.
And yes. And we've not got here overnight, have we?
Nope.
And this isn't just one issue. What do? We've got to carry on saying this is, and speak out. Brave people have got to speak out on every issue. But we've got to fundamentally agree that the right to cause offence isn't, people causing offence isn't a criminal offence. There's a difference between someone saying, I want to kill you, or can someone go and kill him because of his beliefs, and someone criticising my beliefs.
Roger, can I just ask, how much confidence do you now have in this inquiry? Or is it just a way for them to buy some more time to cover up the cover-up?
There are a couple of things going on with this inquiry that has never happened before. First and foremost, you've got Rupert Lowe's parallel inquiry, the rape gang inquiry. That is,
he won't hold back.
Yeah. No, he won't.
Yeah.
And what you've got with him is he will expose and put pressure on. I'm part of his team, and we will expose and put pressure on the official inquiry in a way and hold it to scrutiny in a way it never has done. So we've already got victims and whistleblowers and survivors from all across the country who will testify to us. So if they're testifying to us, we're going to push them to the national inquiry as well. We're going to call MPs. They won't come, but we'll call MPs. We'll say, look, you've got a case to answer. You've got a case to answer. And as soon as all of that goes out into the public domain, it informs, influences, and pushes the national inquiry. Now, the test of the national inquiry, the first test of the national inquiry is who they appoint as the person overseeing it.
Any suggestions so far?
They will try and contain it. If they try and contain it, be a UK judge who they know. We are pushing for an international judge. I'm clear. I want someone from The Hague looking. I want a judge you get from the war criminal,
Has it ever happened? Do they ever use international judges?
No, but nothing like this has ever happened.
Well, can they? I don't know if there's
of course they can.
They legally can do that.
Yeah, they can get judges from elsewhere. Because the judge is just the person who oversees it. He'll have his own team of, King's Councils, investigative teams, sub-branches of various themes. The government sets the terms of reference. Straight away, there was conversations in the national media that the terms of reference would exclude Whitehall and politicians. I don't know if you heard that. That is not possible. It's like going to a nightclub and having no music there.
Yeah.
The terms of reference cannot exclude Whitehall. It cannot exclude politicians. It's not feasible.
No, thank you. We don't accept that.
Yeah, it's not possible. So I
Try
think
again, dickheads.
maybe some idiot mooted it as an idea, but you've got to understand, Starmer's got his back to the wall. He knows, the Prime Minister knows, multiple ministers in his government are neck deep in the cover-up. This isn't a far-right conspiracy.
I do think Baroness Casey, I'm trying to remember on the news, I do think she said that Starmer was right to wait for her review before launching a national inquiry so he could base it on actual data. I think she said that.
She did say that, and then what I would say to you, and I smiled, what I'd say to you is two things. One is, she came back with the absence of data. She came back and said, there isn't the data here. Is the cover-up is that bad? We're hiding the data.
How long would the national inquiry take?
It should take 3 years.
It would ideally finish before the next election.
Mate, if I have my way, we will use it to push and lobby in a way never before seen, and make sure that if it presents evidence or its findings before the next general election, we'll use it to bring this government down. And I'm not joking. I'm telling you straight, Labour Party politicians are neck deep in the cover-up, and they should be held to account. And not only will they be forced to testify, So a test for the national inquiry will be the testimonies. They should be, normally in a national inquiry, they're televised. They should be televised. The BBC should be televising this. When Andy Burnham,
for the victims, they may not want to be televised.
But there's the ability for the victims to give testimony. You can build it into the terms of reference where the testimony is given in a certain way that protects them, which is understandable. We're speaking to victims, and I'm clear with you, we're speaking to victims and the family members of victims who can't wait to testify. Good. Because of what's gone on. I was with a family last week. I'll give you an example. The child was dragged from the school gates. Once the parents complained, the parents were told, you've got to go on a parenting course or else we'll take your daughter off you.
What?
Yeah. She's ready. She's ready. Her daughter, her daughter's she's got an eating disorder. How can I say this to you? She can't put too much food in her mouth because of what it does to her brain of having too many, penises shoved in her mouth at the same time. Yeah? This is how, and they're ready. These people are ready to go and testify in front of any camera, in front of any judge in this country and say, this is what they did to me and this is what the state then did to cover it up.
So in the reopening of cases, does that mean some people will be re-prosecuted who maybe weren't convicted? Are there people who should have been convicted who weren't?
It never got there. What happened was the cases were dropped. It never got to the point of people were being charged and people were being prosecuted and then found not guilty.
But in the reopening of these cases, she mentioned 800 there were, I think up to 1,000. If they reopen them, can they re-prosecute?
Yeah, they were never prosecuted.
Oh, can they now prosecute these people?
Yes.
But can they reopen cases where they have prosecuted and lobby for longer sentences?
Well, that's a separate recommendation possibly from the National Inquiry.
Yeah.
Because the National Inquiry has the powers to recommend law changes. So the National Inquiry could say we need minimum sentencing for those who rape children, across the board. There needs to be a racially aggravated or a religiously aggravated factor attached to these.
Are you being Islamophobic again? But that's the thing. I mean, I'm being facetious because isn't that a contradiction to what they're doing?
What do you say to the guys who kidnapped, tortured, and gang raped 2 children in my town? Because 2 of these guys, they're from Rochdale, but they're also from Oldham. 2 children. They took these children to an address in Chadderton. Yeah. Chadderton is an area of Oldham. From where my mum lives, she's buried in the cemetery there, it's that area. They took them to this house and hundreds of men queued up night after night to gang rape these children.
I mean, to me, I would give these people whole life terms.
But there's got to be recommendations. Hold
on, do we know, sorry, what actual sentence, what's the largest sentence we know somebody
22 years.
So someone got 22 years?
Shabir Ahmed and his, the most infamous ones in Rochdale got 20 years. A lot of his mates are already out. The most recent one, I think 6 years, 7 years.
It's just not enough.
There was a white gang recently in Birmingham, I think, 3 years, 4 years.
And then when these people get out, will they be reaccepted into their community?
The Rochdale guys back holding parties. They're being celebrated because they don't see what they did as wrong.
I mean, it's just not compatible for me with being a decent British
No.
human. I would reopen every case. I would re-prosecute. I would lengthen sentences. I would give whole life terms to some of these fights.
And again, that's a strand surely in the National Inquiry. Because if you methodically look at this, Peter, a strand has got to be where there has been prosecutions. What did we prosecute them for? What was the jail sentence? Were they then allowed back into the communities where they walked past? I mean, the girls in Rochdale talk about walking down the street or in the shopping centre, in the supermarket, and then seeing the guy who was involved in gang raping and walking down, aisle number 5. This is wrong. This is so wrong on so many different levels because they're being prosecuted, and they're being punished again and again when they were the victims all the way along. We talk about compensation. I've been here before with you and I talked about compensation. They dropped that from the ICSA. You know, the ICSA, the Independent Child Sex Inquiry, that talked about that they go, oh, well, we've already done this. There's 20 recommendations here and the government are busy. The government were busy dropping the recommendations to do with compensation to the survivors. The state failed these. You've got to compensate them. And they're saying it costs too much money. Well, I'll tell you what. And am I being racist? I don't know. I'll tell you right now. We give £130 million in international aid to Pakistan. And that's just the latest figures. Ring-fence that and give it to every survivor.
I mean, they can find the money. They
find the money, can't they?
They find the money for every fucking stupid thing they want to pay for. They can. I went through the recommendations, and the first one blew my mind. So the recommendation of a mandatory rape charge for adults penetrating under 16s, right? So I do have questions on this. I would want to speak to Baroness Casey and say, in the case of a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old in a relationship, what does this mean? But outside of that, what I didn't realize at the time is that if you're 13, 14, or 15, it's not mandatory rape if they consented. So these adults who were having sex with 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, and these weren't teenage lovers, these were older men.
So let me.
That blew my mind. They could give consent.
Let me expand on that. When I saw that, as being someone who'd spent 20 years working in safeguarding children, that is news to me. I then went and asked senior safeguarding professionals I know who work with children in colleges, you know, and they said, no, Roger, that's nonsense, right? It's nonsense. It's rape. First, and secondly, what you've got to understand there is that if they were consenting, say they were consenting to the boyfriends, and they were 17 and one's 14 or 15, it's a completely different context. Yeah, we agree. It's a completely different context to what was taking place here, because they're not consenting. The men they're going after, consistently across the board, time after time, they weren't the ones who were the only ones who had sex with these children or raped these children. The terminology you can use. She might, a 14-year-old child who's had a damaged upbringing, in need of affection or love, might think she was consenting, you know, but she was exploited. First and foremost, she was exploited. So to ignore that is first wrong, but secondly, what these men did, every one of them did, was they did not have a consensual sex with a child on their own. They then passed them on to 51 of their mates.
And did some pretty gruesome, grotesque things to these
children. Yeah.
And
so that wouldn't stand up to scrutiny anyway. If you brought me the case files, or where you say, okay, there was some sort of, she thought she was consenting, I would then look at those case files, and in every one of them, I would definitely show you that was just one stage of the grooming process where she thought she was in a loving relationship with some 18-year-old or 19-year-old who she was consenting with, but he was part of the grooming process where he took first dibs at her, then introduced her to his uncles and cousins, who then had goes at her, and then they between them, through the clans that they operate in, drugged her up and put her in taxis and took her around the country and sold her.
So on this podcast, you are definitely hearing me talk about Bitcoin a lot. Well, why? We live in a really strange time with governments driving inflation with their reckless spending and endless money printing. There is a way out of this. There is a way to protect your money, and that is by stacking Bitcoin. I've made loads of shows about Bitcoin. You can go and research this, you can go and read the books, but the truth is, it is the hardest money ever created. If you are interested in protecting your financial future, it's time for you to get on the Bitcoin train. I've been stacking Bitcoin personally and through my businesses since 2017. It's protected me, it's secured my family's future, and it also strengthens all of my businesses. So if you want to start stacking Bitcoin, where do you do it? Well, for me, it's with Gemini. They're a fully licensed, full reserve exchange and custodian, so they give you a secure way for you to buy and own your Bitcoin. There's no risks and no funny business. So if you're serious about stacking Bitcoin the right way, head over to Gemini.com, which is Gemini.com. I don't think
It doesn't stack up.
No, it doesn't
That
stack up. But it doesn't, like, being a parent and having a daughter, it doesn't stack up that a 13-year-old can ever consent. They might say yes, but they can never consent.
No.
They don't understand what they're consenting to.
And is that not the state's responsibility to safeguard children doing
Absolutely.
it? Yeah. So that doesn't stack up, and it won't stack up in the evidence trail. Because these children, these men that they're saying that were their boyfriends, when you look at the evidence trail, that evidence trail will clearly show that they were just one of many and the first of many in the grooming and gang raping process.
This is another one that just blew my mind. Quash convictions of child victims prosecuted for prostitution-related offences.
Plenty
What
of stories.
the fuck?
Plenty of stories when the police turned up, they arrested the children who were in the knickers or in the underwear with no clothes on rather than the 7 or 8 men in the room with them.
It's pure insanity. It's pure insanity.
They arrested and charged her rather than deal with what was really taking place. Plenty of cases. And there's other cases. This is where it gets dark and it affects me because I've met with these kids and they share with me, go and get one of your friends, otherwise we'll burn your house down. Go and get one of your friends, otherwise you'll have to have all 50 or all 100 of the customers we've got tonight. So these girls who were put under that sort of pressure or blackmailed in that way are then charged as pimps. And they did. They charged and prosecuted them.
Talk to me about these taxi licensing loopholes.
So this is how it works. When we exposed it in Oldham, and again I give Oldham as a case study because I understand it, we knew that the council was approving taxi licenses to men that they knew that had been convicted of child sexual offences, who then went on to continue to use the taxi.
Hold on, we need to go through this slowly. Sorry. They were approving licenses for people they knew had been convicted. So when you apply for a taxi licence, you have to declare your convictions.
They knew and they were approving them. Okay?
Fucking hell,
Right?
man.
Now, apparently, they've closed the loophole, but you need to understand how this works. There's an overrepresentation in the taxi trade of Pakistani men. We know this, it's, the facts are there. It's not a criticism. They go out and work and they earn a living for their families and all of that. So I'm not demonizing them all. But they deliver a block vote. Come an election time, whoever gets the picture with the taxi alliance or the taxi union is guaranteed thousands of votes. They did it in my town. You'll see Arood Shah, the leader of Oldham Council, went out, screams and shouts misogyny all the time like Jess Phillips. Her and a gangster mate, Irish Shimmy, went and got the votes of the local Asian Taxi Association. It meant straight away she's got votes. Do you think those votes come without a price? She's got to take care of them. What happens in my town, and this was as recently as last month, and I'll send it you. Like I normally do, I'll send you the document, you'll see it, that they had to refuse an application. And the councillor had to excuse himself from the room. He was a convicted child sex offender. It went all the way to a panel before it got refused. It's rigged. The system's rigged. And what was then also taking place is, I think it's Wolverhampton or somewhere, where these authorities, because you get paid, the councils get paid, and you can go anywhere and get your license. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to go to the places where they know the system's lax, where the rules are bendable, where someone can take a bribe.
Goes back to this point of rot everywhere.
Yeah, it's rotten. But why are we having a conversation about taxi licenses? Should it not be a given? And should it not be a given that if you're a taxi, if I was a taxi driver, I'd want mandatory CCTV to protect me. Never mind the
Well, the police have them now.
Yeah.
Well, I also think there's certain jobs people with sexual convictions shouldn't do. Don't want them as a teacher. Don't want them to protect the children. Don't want them in taxis.
Do you know that councillors, politicians do not have to have a DBS check?
No. That's insane.
Yes.
I mean, we have to have it running a football club.
Yeah. I've always had to add one. Anyone who ever worked for me, enhanced DBS check. Count politicians. The law does not require politicians to have a DBS check.
That should be in the recommendations.
And then these politicians take on boards as school governors and and then they access children.
I mean, it's...
So there's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity here. We fought hard to get this opportunity. So many people say it'll be rigged, and I think, they'll probably will try and rig it, but it's our job to do our best to get as much out of it as possible.
Well, the interesting thing will be the like-for-like comparison with Rupert Lowe's. That will be interesting, because I know what will happen is if there are significant differences, people will trust Rupert Lowe's ahead of the government's national inquiry because people don't trust government anymore.
And Rupert Lowe's inquiry is crowdfunded by over 20,000 people across the country.
How long is that expected to take?
I think it's October where we're actually having testimony. We've got a judge in place, and we're taking testimony somewhere in London.
See, anybody who turns down a request to give testimony, I'm immediately suspicious of.
We're going to call Andy Burnham.
Okay, so Andy Burnham is the
Greater Manchester Mayor.
Yeah, Greater Manchester Mayor. Has been seen as a good mayor widely. He's considered a...
Well, he's neck deep currently in a scandal of giving millions of pounds in grants to some property developer in a back room.
Oh, here we go. Because his name has been rumoured as a potential candidate to replace Keir Starmer.
And I mean, I'm very much enjoying mocking him because I know by the time we finish, he'll do well to stay out of prison.
Oh, great. Okay, let's look at that. Connor, can you just look up this Andy-Burnham corruption thing that Rogers just mentioned? Because I hadn't heard about this.
Oh, no. Type in Renneker, Renkeer, I think, and Andy Burnham.
Haven't heard about this.
No.
But his name came up recently in a discussion about who's going to replace Keir Starmer because he's not going to ask. Here we go. Andy Burnham defends 800 million taxpayer loans for luxury skyscrapers. Oh, I can't read the article.
Manchester Evening News will have it. There you go.
No, not that.
Go that one there. The yellow
right,
one, yeah.
It's a different one. So Andy Burnham allowed 120 million loans with no lawful or proper process court hearings. Could you just zoom in on that? Andy Burnham has been accused of allowing 140 million of public money to be loaned to a developer with no lawful or proper process. The Greater Manchester Combined Authority denies the claims about the loans handed to Renneker, the developer by many of the city's luxury skyscrapers, but a court heard today that the decision-making process was flawed and unlawful. The case brought to the Competition Appeal Tribunal is the latest legal challenge from Manchester property developer Aubrey Wells. The Wells Group owner claims that GMCA created an unlevel playing field by giving Renneker lower rates of interest on two loans. Yeah. The loans in question relate to two Renneker developments, Trinity and Jackson, the second of which is known as Contour. That's interesting.
And Andy Burnham now is rewriting history, or the Manchester Evening News are helping him rewrite history. Apparently, the national inquiry happened because of him.
Did it?
Yes.
Thanks, Andy.
Yes.
Cheers, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. So give me the background on Andy Burnham, how his
story goes, he was in the car one day, heard the Betrayed Girls, or the documentary, the BBC documentary, and he was so outraged, and he launched these assurance reviews. One of the assurance reviews he launched was the review in Oldham. So the first one was to do in Manchester, Operation Augusta, where Maggie Oliver was involved. The one where they shut down an investigation into 97 known members of a rape gang. They just shut it down, claimed it was an absence of, they didn't have the resources to continue. So they let 97 offenders carry on raping children. It's included a girl called Victoria Goglia, whose diary is, if you read it, you'll cry. And, she talks about a girl in care. They killed her with heroin. By the end of it, they killed her with heroin. And the police and the council were involved, catastrophic failings. And Maggie Oliver still confirms that there was a serving police officer in the rape gangs. And neither Andy Burnham or the Greater Manchester Police will say anything. She's been on Channel 4 News and said, on Channel 4...
Has she named them?
No. She got a call from... She was out with a survivor as a police officer who identified a man who got in a car. She put in the number plate in the police system, and she got a call back from someone on the police sort of internal affairs confirming that this was a police officer.
And this police officer has been investigated?
No one talks about it. Completely hidden.
Is there anything online?
She talked about it on Groomed a National Scandal on Channel 4.
Is that going to be part of the reopening of 800 cases?
It's going to have to be, hasn't it?
Has to be.
Well, I'll be talking about it. You'll be talking about it.
Do you know who it is?
No. What I do know is that the rape gangs did infiltrate the police through the cousin and the clan networks. And what I do know is in South Yorkshire, serving police officers were arrested last year. And from what I can piece together, that's police officers who knew what was taking place and wanted dibs, or if you're having a go, I'll have a go as well. And then you give me 10% or 20% of your takings. How can I say, old-fashioned corruption rather than, an active member of the rape gangs. But in Manchester, he was an active member of the rape gangs.
And so, carry on with Andy Burnham.
Andy Burnham's assurance review in Oldham set up these terms of references. Remember, we forced the assurance review. We forced him to investigate, so he tried to contain it. He brought in his experts, Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway. These two individuals have since ran away and given up. The work didn't finish the work. But his assurance review in Oldham, its terms of reference, excluded schools.
What?
Excluded schools.
Why?
Why do you think? Right. So it excluded schools as an example. And when it produces, during its process of its investigations, it did not interview a single survivor. So you exclude schools. You do not interview a single survivor.
So what's left?
You take a sample of the cases that the council have given you to look at. So they took 10 sample cases handpicked by the council. Even those 10 sample cases, all 10 of them proved that these children were groomed and gang raped, and the authorities failed them. You then take testimony from whistleblowers. Whistleblower after whistleblower refused to sign off their testimonies because what they said was not what was written, because they did not record the testimony. They took notes that they felt was important.
just
So
madness.
They got in touch with me. I point blank refused on the basis that I will not give testimony.
You told me about this last time.
Unless it's recorded.
And they declined it.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, I said, but do it in public or record my testimony. No. They then claimed...
You should have secretly recorded it yourself and you could have exposed them.
Well, two of the others did.
Oh.
There was a guy called Kaiser Rahman who gave testimony and then withdrew because former councillor who withdrew because every time they put something in front of him, it wasn't what he said. And then Hughie MacDonald, who was a serving councillor who exposed all of this a long time ago, ex-magistrate, chief magistrate in the town, refused to sign off his testimony. These aren't like, some random idiots. You're talking about people with stature, particularly in the case of Hughie MacDonald, and he was refusing to sign off his testimony.
Is there any mainstream public criticism of Andy Burnham with the rape gangs?
No. You see, he's very clever, yeah. And if you read what's come out in terms of the Manchester Evening News, you'll see he's now being credited for his role in securing a national inquiry. He fronted an inquiry. He fronted that report, which was a fake report. We critiqued it. We criticised it. We forced the council where we come from to acknowledge the failings in the report, which is what led to the vote which we passed to write to the Home Secretary. He fronted that report, saying there was no political cover-up. We now know there was a political cover-up, and he changed his mind in January to say, yes, it was limited.
But this again comes back to the journalists. They should be doing their job.
But they're in the pockets of these... They come from the same political mindset. It's that left ideology. They're on the same side.
I think there's more to it than that. I also just think journalism has sadly died. Some forms of journalism have sadly died over the last 2 decades with the internet. A lot of these things aren't making money, but we have seen the birth of a new form of journalism, which is the independent, the podcaster, the reporter, the Twitter profile, where they've started to expose this stuff and are becoming more legitimate because of this, and they're able to do a Substack and actually make money off it. So we're seeing that balance of power shift, which I think is a good thing.
I definitely think it's a good thing.
But also the problem for the independent goes back to the free speech issue, is that you risk litigation. I had a 6-year lawsuit for calling somebody a liar on Twitter who was a liar. I proved to be correct, spent 6 years in a lawsuit. I was close to being bankrupted. I actually lost my libel case, but he only got a £1 judgment. But I was right. But because of our defamation laws, they were able to do a slap case against me and try and destroy my life. And so, as an independent journalist, I would be fearful of directly criticising Andy Burnham.
The Labour Party lawyers attempted to take me to court.
Fuckers.
Right? The Labour Party lawyers wrote to me last year a defamation case, claiming what I'm talking about is a lie, and I need to do X, Y, and Z, otherwise they will sue me for defamation. I told them, I ain't got a lot of money, you know, you can see what I am. I told them I'll see them in the High Court. Not heard back from them since.
I wonder if we're going to get in trouble for this one. I wonder if YouTube will pull it, because they did pull Andrew Gold's interview.
They pulled Andrew Gold's interview.
Have they put it back? Have they given him a reason?
No.
I wonder if he got a strike for it.
No.
So they just pulled it?
They just pulled it. Because I had 9 of mine pulled at the same time. And one of the ones I had pulled was playing Keir Starmer's video saying it was a far-right conspiracy.
They haven't pulled my one with you?
No. They went to them. So the Labour Party or these powerful people went to YouTube. It wasn't something YouTube instigated. They went to them.
But YouTube needs to grow a pair.
Well, I'm still here, you know?
Yeah. I mean, our interview's still there.
Yeah.
This is more punchy. This one might ruffle a few more feathers.
This national inquiry will either see politicians in prison or it will be just one massive cover-up. It's going to be one or the other. There's no middle ground here. There's no institutional learning here. Individuals, as Casey confirms, knew that children were being groomed and gang raped, and they looked the other way.
Yeah. The report describes a culture of blindness, ignorance, and prejudice where authorities turned a blind eye to grooming networks rather than confront them head on. Decision makers often avoided recording the ethnicity of perpetrators, fearing accusation of racism, a systematic failure that amounted to the cover-up. I mean, I've got it all here. Council figures suppressed evidence, and Rotherham officials include ex-deputy councillor Jahangir Akhtar. Is that correct?
Well, he's named. He's got to give evidence, and you've got to prosecute him.
He was found to have actively shut down discussion about abuse allegations, allegedly deleting or disappearing files, and silencing whistleblowers.
There you go.
Former whistleblowers like John, is that Pecos?
Yeah. So John's a friend of mine.
Reported being told by West Yorkshire Police and council
I shared the
officials.
story with you. You know about the Bradford, the police officer.
Dropped the case when trying to pursue abuse claims in Bradford. Maggie Oliver, absolute hero, Maggie.
Yeah,
we'll love you.
Up, yeah.
The Rochdale whistleblower described efforts by police and council to actively close down cases and punish truth tellers rather than address offending.
When they investigate Oldham, and it'll come out, you will find that the information clearly shows senior council officials colluding with police officers through something called Operation Hexagon to come after me and members of my town who spoke out.
The National Crime Agency later investigated potential criminal misconduct by councillors who may have deliberately covered up the full extent of abuse to avoid racism accusation, which is bad, but this one, and protect political interests. That's the thing I keep coming back to most of all.
And this is my position. They sold children for votes.
Yeah, they sold children for votes. That to me, that is the most insane part of this. Like the lack of integrity. Like, how can you get yourself to a position where you have this, where it's a dilemma for you, where you're like, okay, we should cover this up because we want to protect. How much do you want power that you're willing to allow the systematic abuse, rape of children? How can, and it's just fucking hell.
It's wrong,
Roger,
isn't it?
No, it's just like,
and if this
fuck these
inquiry
people.
is successful to where we want it, where you want, not only will politicians go to prison, it will come out, page 1, children were sold for votes. And that is a national shame. And it's a stain that cannot be wiped clean just by a report.
I do want to ask you, so it did say in Rotherham that 64% were Asian or Pakistani origin, but that doesn't...
They're Mirpuri. So it's a subsect. It's actually not just Pakistani. It's clan. This is clan-based culture.
Okay, so explain that to me if somebody doesn't know.
So in terms of Pakistan, as you see it as a nation, yeah? They're not. It's not a nation as we see it in the West, yeah? They're clans. They're clans according to different regions.
Okay.
So Mirpur is a region. Mirpur was it's in modern day Kashmir, the bit of Kashmir. There was a valley there. They flooded the valley to make a reservoir, and basically the majority of a significant number of Mirpuris came to the United Kingdom. The Pakistanis, like Ben Habib, for instance, will describe the Mirpuris as backward. You know, there's village backward sort of, but they have a whole host of cultural norms and traditions that are not compatible with modern Western. You know, so the way they treat women, the first cousin marriage is more prevalent in that specific clan than in others. And a significant majority of the men, once you drill it down, were not just Pakistani. They were from one specific region of Pakistan, which is Mirpur. The Conservative Shadow Home Secretary has made reference to it. Baroness Casey makes reference to it in a 2015 report in Rotherham, where she talks about you can drill it down to specific villages in Pakistan. So it's an undercurrent. Tahir Ali, the Birmingham MP, he wants an airport, remember? Built in Mirpur.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see how powerful that group politically is. It's got to be powerful. Otherwise, why would you have a British MP arguing for an airport built in some semi, rural backwater in Pakistan?
Wasn't that also connected to us in Bedford, Connor? I'm sure I read it was. But the question I want to ask you is, that's 64% in Rotherham. The other 36%, are these white gangs? Is it other nationalities? What I mean,
so I when I used to describe them, I used to say they were predominantly Pakistani, occasionally Bangladeshi, almost exclusively Muslim. You can put whatever demographic characteristic you want on it. What Baroness Casey also referenced, and it caused anxiety in the government, was that there are a new wave of grooming gangs, and the links to these men, the people who are the new asylum seekers and all of that. And I heard a reference earlier on this week to Somali and Somali gangs being referenced in this. What we've got, in the end, what we've got is a group of men who are coming here, who see our girls, our children, as fair game, because they come from a culture where they have contempt for women to start off with, and they do not see children as children, because the teachings that they have is that if they've had a period or something, then they're fair game.
Well, that was another insane thing in the recommendations, to deny asylum to convicted sexual offenders. Why
are we even considering it?
Yeah, why are we even considering it? Like, what?
So this is where I look at the likes of, Rupert Lowe does it, but I look at the likes of Reform, and I hope they, as a supporter, I hope they get, a bit more courage, because surely automatic deportations for offenders.
Yeah.
Surely.
It's an easy decision.
Surely it's a win, is it? Foreign nationals, yeah? Automatic deportation. why is no one even, what are we arguing over?
Are there issues with domestic white rape gangs? Well, I've seen them, but because
I have this conversation regularly with my Muslim friends.
Well, can I just bring up, this isn't I'm not trying to make a point that, well, it can be any race, blah blah. I'm just saying there seems to also be an issue with just rape gangs generally. I and this complete lack of care for young people.
I look at this, I have this conversation within my own community, and I think it's good that you've raised it. First and foremost, we have an issue with children.
Yeah.
And there's safeguarding with children, and that goes to the elite and senior politicians in our country who have raped children and been allowed to get away with it, or senior public figures who've done that. You look at Savile, you look at Cyril Smith, for instance, yeah? So that culture exists within this country, that cover-up culture of child rape. It's worth... so what if he's raped 100 children? To save face, it's worth it. Which is why we didn't go after Cyril Smith.
Well, we don't even put in TV presenters who are caught with the worst horrific paedophile.
Hugh Edwards, yeah.
I mean, that was a perfect opportunity for the state and the institution and to prove that they want to protect children. He's caught with the worst of category paedophile images, and he is given a suspended sentence. And Lucy Connolly, by the way, I'm not approving of what Lucy Connolly said. We put her in jail for 3.5 years for a stupid tweet. A stupid tweet where she didn't know she was committing a crime and she just acted irrationally, put something abhorrent out there.
And then deleted it.
Whilst he knew exactly what he was looking at. He knew it was a criminal offence, and he's a disgusting paedophile.
So we agree that there is a state-level indifference to what takes place in the abuse of children.
It's just a weird hierarchy of justice.
Yeah. So that culture exists as a foundation. In terms of the white paedophiles, and there was a gang recently in the Midlands, 3 years, 4 years. I think they kidnapped a kid off the street, and one forced oral sex with her whilst they videoed it and filmed it, and they got next to nothing. They got next to nothing.
Those cases should also be reopened.
I think, as an outcome of this, for the vast majority of people are not here because they're racist. They're here because they care about children. I think as a natural outcome to all of this, what this national inquiry needs to recommend is minimum sentences for sexual offences against children.
Yeah, very high ones.
Yeah, 100%. Because I've sat in rooms with children and young women whose lives have been... I've got a daughter, you've got children. I wouldn't, I don't know how I'd react.
I'd cut their dick off. Sorry. I fucking would. God knows what Connor would do.
But you understand, don't you?
Yeah, fuck this.
But we need to make the punishment so severe that anyone who's considering this thinks, hold on, it's not worth me for 20 years or 30 years. And every foreign national who's convicted of these crimes automatically deported. I don't care about your human rights. I don't care about your right to family. Your family can go with you if you want. Every foreign national...
I care about the human rights of the people who live there.
I care about the human rights of the children that you passed around to your mates. 50 a night. 50 a night. I came from a meeting last week where the poor child said hundreds. The police knew hundreds. The council knew. They put the mother on a parenting course. Targeted in school. The school was the place where the young Pakistani lads who were 15 or 16 were recruited to find girls inside the school, lure them out as though they were their girlfriends, distance them from their families, and then pass them on to their cousin and uncles.
It's quite hard to comprehend as well that people are able to do this with an indifference to what they're doing, that they don't have a moral threshold this crosses. It amazes me. And look, you've explained it, but it's still just amazing.
But they do not see white children or white working class children as humans the same as you and I do.
But
the racism is so extreme. The prejudice they hold against you and people who look like you is so extreme. And people like me, because culturally they've done this in the past. The entire nation is built on the concept of rape genocide. They did it in 1947 when Pakistan was formed to get rid of the Hindus and the Sikhs. They raped the women and they raped the children to, wipe them out, rape genocide. And in 1971, they did it in Bangladesh. In 9 months, the official figures are 300, 400,000. This is part of their culture. And I'm sorry, it doesn't make me racist. They need to own it and they need to change.
But it allows for the empathy for the idea that there is an incompatibility issue here. It's a hard thing to raise previously because you were classed a racist. But the truth is, it's protecting another form of racism.
And I say to you, I say to everyone, my lived experience of this is that not all cultures are the same. We talk about a multicultural society, and I'm sorry, that doesn't work. It's not worked. All cultures are not the same because I've seen it myself. All cultures are not the same because in certain cultures, they accept this. And this barbarism I can't accept. The national inquiry needs to look at the motivations of the perpetrators has got to be looked at in the national inquiry. You can't ignore the motivations of those who did it.
Yeah, but I wonder, so what will the recommendations for that be?
And isn't it going to be great?
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because this will be a national inquiry that will have to recommend sanctions against a subsect of our, of people who live here to say, actually, your belief systems and your, attitudes are wrong and they need dealing with.
And it will require the imams who you've mentioned to step up and force that change. You must know good imams who, please tell me you know good imams who have stood up against this.
I of course I do. I have friends of mine who are imams who leak me information, who send me information.
But has anyone been public?
No, because...
Fear again.
Yeah, it's fear. What I'm sharing with you, I'm not unique in those spaces. What perhaps I am unique in is that I've said, stuff this. I'm not going to allow, I'm not going to stay silent once children are being gang raped.
Is this still going on?
She said it is. Baroness Casey said it is. Baroness Casey's confirmed it is. You don't need it from me. Baroness Casey's confirmed it is.
How is she able to prove that it's still going on and the police aren't dealing with this?
She's gone to the 3 police forces out of the 43. So there's 43 police forces across the country. She's come back with data from just 3 of them.
I can help that.
When I say industrial scale, I mean industrial scale.
And the thing is, I know you're not going to trust this inquiry.
We've got to lobby. We've got to, we've got to get the best out of it.
If you were given the floor in Parliament for 5 minutes, what would you say? You don't have to give me the whole 5 minutes, but
justice needs to be delivered, and that justice includes politicians going to prison and a complete overhaul of our legal system, so we protect children. First and foremost, this country has got to protect its children. Every law, every decision we make, first and foremost, we've got to protect our children. What sort of society are we if we do not protect our children? And I don't care what it costs. I started to use the word, not compensation, but reparations. We need to pay these children. I've seen how damaged some of these young women are. We have a responsibility. I don't care where you get the money from. And this has got to be brought to an end. And we bring it to an end by punishing those who are responsible and going for the cultural or religious underpinnings that they use to legitimize it. And I don't care who it offends. Because first and foremost, we cannot accept any belief system that says it's okay to rape children.
I mean, Raja, I just commend you for everything you've done.
No, I'm grateful. When you got in touch with me, I'm thinking, I'm definitely coming back down because you give me a space. People like you give me a space. Otherwise, to this day, I'm still blacklisted.
I know, but you've done this at great personal cost, great personal risk. I'm sure you've been through some tough times. Not only when you feel like you're being attacked, but but nobody's listening. You're not able to get what feels like something that should be an easy thing to take to the government, to the police, to the council, say, here's a problem, go fix it. And you've seen them willfully ignore it or purposely cover it up, and to carry on and on and on. I commend you.
They've tried to put me in prison to stop me from sharing this with you and stop me from getting this far. And I look at this, and I look at my daughter and I think, history will remember me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I commend you, man, and I appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll keep talking and we'll keep a close eye on this inquiry, both this one and Rupert's. And again,
watch Rupert's. It's going to be epic, because what he does will, in his own style, because he's no nonsense, in his own style, and you'll see it'll force this inquiry into a corner, and he'll have to do things only because you've got something running parallel with a guy who doesn't care who he upsets.
He's based. He don't care. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
No, thank you so much.
No, thank you for everything you've done. It's a hot, sweaty room we're in as well today. The weather is hot. But thank you to everyone for listening. Keep an eye on this case. Pressure your politicians. Pressure the media. See you all soon. Bye.